How's it going, everybody? It is Sandwhichpants here today, and I am going ahead and starting a recording to give a little bit of an introduction. This is my very first time that I'm going to be doing an actual interview with somebody, and it's something that I'm pretty excited for. The candidate is a local candidate for for a local position in in my home state of Oklahoma. So I wanted to go ahead and conduct a little interview, kind of talk to them, figure out what positions they hold for other people, figure out for other people what positions they hold, kind of put out the promote the name and everything. Uh, let's go ahead and get this call on the road. I am going to be doing this interview on this semi live thing. Let's go ahead and go.
Hey,
How's it going?
I'm good. Do you want me to turn on my video?
We can. I'll go ahead and turn mine on,
All right.
and I'll switch this over to the live screen so we can see. Oh, come on, camera. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
wait, I think it's mad because Streamlabs. I don't know how to split this yet.
Oh.
Let's turn that off and we'll have it be just on here if it will pick it up, please.
Mm-hmm. And we're recording this, right? This isn't live.
Yes, it is just
Okay.
being recorded.
All right. Cool, cool, cool.
I haven't ever done an interview before, so, well, I guess my camera doesn't want to pick up on here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to figure out how to do that later, so let's just go ahead and put it back up onto the OBS so they can at least see me. Alright. Now, for interview purposes, let's go ahead and start with your name and what position you're running for.
Oh, I am Gregory Hardin II, and I am running for a seat in the Oklahoma House of um, Representatives in District 26, which represents the Shawnee Bethel Acres area of Oklahoma.
Alright, perfect. So, what I wanted to kind of tackle is a few things that I've asked around about and some stuff that I know about. Some policies I know we could potentially push for on a state level, and
Mm-hmm.
also have like showing a broader support from a state level to a national platform for things such as the Green New Deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to kind of push you a little bit into talking about what positions like that you would hold Green New Deal, for example. What positions you're planning on running on, what you're focusing on.
Well, I wasn't really, um, with my platform, I wasn't really planning on focusing on stuff like the Green New Deal or green energy, though that is something I do support at the national level, Green New Deal. When it comes to certain green technologies or being more less fossil fuels, more wind and solar energy, Oklahoma actually does, comparative to other states, has actually done pretty well with that. I can't remember the specific numbers I remember reading, but we're like one of the leading states when it comes to, I believe, wind. And I think that a certain percentage of our energy that we consume here in Oklahoma is not fossil fuels, and it is either wind or solar. I can't remember what the specific percentage is, but it's a pretty decent percentage. But that is something I do support. We've already done really good when it comes to that kind of stuff, and I'd like to continue that. I believe um, that work's already being done, and we should just like continue it. That's pretty much where I'm at when it comes to that. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Uh, how would you feel about trying to push for a removal of some of the state subsidies we give to places like Chesapeake and Devon?
Yeah. So when it comes to that, I'm definitely in favor of getting rid of those subsidies. More specifically, I'm also in favor of raising the tax for these oil companies. One of the taxes that people talk about a lot is the gross production tax, or the GPT. For most of the state's history, it was at 7%. Then they lowered it to 2% in somewhere in the early years of the Fallon administration. I want to say like 2013 or so. And they raised it back to 5%, but I think it was only for like newer wells in 2018. And I want to see that at least back at the 7% that it used to be, but not just for older or for new wells, but for old wells as well. Um, because as long as we're drilling oil, I would like for the people of the state of Oklahoma to be able to benefit from, you know, that oil being drilled. I think other states have it higher than 7%, even they have it at like 10% or 13%. And I would also be in favor of raising it higher than that as well. I don't think raising, or I know for a fact that raising the gross production tax isn't necessarily going to make oil and gas companies not drill. They've done studies on this. They're going to drill where they find the oil. And that's kind of how it is. And if we could take that money that we get from taxing them and use it for whether that be education or funding more research in renewable energy or converting some of our infrastructure to being more environmentally friendly and whatnot, then I would favor that.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm a big fan of trying to figure out a. That's actually something I had in my text list of questions that people sent in was changing the way we fund schools from property taxes to maybe a different form of tax, like with the oil companies or something, and raising that rate up or coupling
Yeah.
another tax into it. So let's go ahead and move on to that one. How do you want to improve the educational system in this state?
Um, well, that's a broad question, but I think some of the more basic answers, and pretty much even though they're basic answers, there's still things that we need to do is work on raising teacher pay. We still have a teacher shortage in the state of Oklahoma. And I'd like for us to be able to hire more teachers and be able to have teachers not have to move to different districts or leave the state or leave the profession of teaching in general simply because they're not being paid enough. Uh, Most of the teachers that I had whenever I was in high school, Shawnee High School, are gone. I think only about like 8 of them still teach at Shawnee High School, and I was there all 4 years. So and I it wasn't even that long ago that I graduated. It was only about a little over 5 years ago. And same with middle school and elementary. Most of my teachers that I had back then are gone now. Sure, some of them retired, but not all of them retired. A lot of them left the state or stopped teaching entirely or left the school district or the town that they were living in and teaching in, so they could find better opportunities that would pay them more. And I think if we raise teacher pay, we could try to stabilize some of the communities and some of the schools that end up having a mass exodus of like 20 or 30 teachers every year. Along with the teacher shortage, we also have a substitute teacher shortage, which is something that people aren't talking about as much, but teachers are talking about it. I myself am a substitute teacher. And yeah, like I feel like we need to also raise substitute teacher pay as well. If we want people to actually be able to substitute teach, we also have to raise the pay for that and make that something viable that people want to actually do. And along with that, we also need to be changing. I would say we need to be changing the way that we fund public schools away from property taxes, though I think that's a little bit of a harder thing to be able to do. But I think we should be looking at different ways to fund um public education in schools in a way that isn't tied directly to property taxes. But we also need to be just funding schools more in general and having more opportunities for kids in schools, and also um strengthen some of these extracurricular programs outside of just the sports, so kids can be able to be in band, be in robotics, stuff like that. And yeah, those are pretty much the bulk of things that I really would like to work on and see happen. Um, so yeah.
All right, you having a multi-tiered approach. I do enjoy that. Not just going for one thing, having multiple avenues open to tackle a problem is great. Um,
Yeah, because you kind of have to do all of them. You can't just do one, because as a substitute teacher, kind of seen how, different schools operate and what some of the different issues it is that they have. And, you know, one issue might kind of halfway be solved by just simply hiring more teachers, but also it's not just a matter of hiring more teachers or, raising teacher pay. It's also a matter of making sure the actual classrooms are funded and the actual schools are funded so they can be able to afford books or other classroom equipment and stuff like that. So yeah.
all right. Uh, now another thing somebody had brought up, and I actually already had it kind of on my list, is do you think that there's anything that we could do at a state level to incentivize bank loans or other ways to start up more worker cooperatives as opposed to traditionally owned firms?
So yeah, this is something I've kind of thought about, but not too much. I need to look into it a little bit more because I did an interview with what's his name? Uh former delegate Lee Carter from West Virginia, or Virginia, not West Virginia. And he talked about how he authored a bill that simply made worker co-ops legal. So I guess in some states or in some places, it's not necessarily like an actual legal thing you can form, and like that's kind of an issue. I do need to look into that more when it comes to Oklahoma, because that was something I didn't really know was like a thing, was that it wasn't really an actual thing you could form. But I think that's something that I'd be interested in looking at doing. In terms of banks and loans, in order to be able to fund those things, um, I guess I would also look more into that as well. I'm not really exactly sure how the state of Oklahoma would be able to try to incentivize that, because you'd have to be, because we don't have a state bank. We have, all the banks in Oklahoma are private. We don't have a national bank or nationalized bank. So you would actually be having to incentivize banks to be able to do that. I wouldn't know exactly how we would go about doing that. But yeah, that is something I've thought about and
Uh,
would support, yes.
all right. Yeah, the my thought was like with the whole removal of oil subsidies, we might actually be able to funnel that into more worker co-op, like state-funded worker co-op things, not state-controlled, but
Yeah.
apply for a subsidy or a loan or whatever, and they'll just you get some money, start up your worker co-op, pay back off the loan to the state at no interest or whatever, maybe a little interest, so the state has a little extra money coming in, then you pay your taxes like normal and could
Yeah.
operate. But I know that will be a very hard fight.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, how how do you feel about trying to do what I've heard other states talking about doing, and I think a couple other states actually have done, like a statewide Medicare for all program?
hmm I would be in support of something like that. I don't think there's any states who have done it. There are states that have like kind of created bills and have plotted out the infrastructure and how it would be funded and supported. That is something I would be in support of at the state level. I don't know how we would actually go about doing that, and also the arguments to be able to make at the state legislature to be able to, make that a serious thing, I think would be a losing battle simply because, you know, we don't really, like, no one in the legislature wants to raise taxes. But also, uh, in the same point as that, we also are barely even doing, raising funding for education and other services. Not so much, simply because of the makeup of the legislature. We already have a hard time doing that. So that is something I would support, but it and would like to see happen. Another thing when it comes to healthcare that I would like to see happen if I'm elected is trying to build uh more rural hospitals.
Absolutely.
This is something that like I've kind of tried to ask questions about and look into. And to my knowledge, it is possible for the state legislature to like build or commission you know the building of hospitals within rural areas. I'm not exactly sure how that would work or like what I would need to do or what the state would need to do in order to do that. But I believe that is something that is possible. And I think that is something that needs to be done. Even if those hospitals aren't like state funded necessarily, but are like, maybe partially state funded for a little bit, but then also because it's a hospital that'll take Medicare and Medicaid funding, it'll also have, get money from that because we also just expanded Medicare or Medicaid in the state of Oklahoma, and that'll help keep other hospitals open. So that's something that I'm definitely concerned about, is just making sure that people in rural areas are able to not have to travel an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours to get to a hospital so they can get medical care. um, it's not necessarily an issue for my district, Shawnee, because we have a hospital in the middle of the district, but that's still something that I feel like is an issue that, people need to be concerned about regardless of where they're from in the state. And yeah.
Absolutely. As far as getting an expansion, I did kind of have an idea because we've got Sooner Care. So we
Yeah.
don't necessarily need to bill it as like a Medicare for all statewide thing.
Hmm.
You just go
Yeah.
in with a kind of populist look. Oklahoma has the best university for learning how to be a doctor. We have the best
Yeah.
medical institution, educational institution in the country. Why don't we have the best actual medical institution, the best system
Yeah.
to promote these doctors, to get them into good places, to get them into good jobs? We could cover everybody with Sooner Care, or then
Yeah.
how you bill it out as far as like funding and stuff. That's a whole different battle. But getting
Yeah.
people on board with it, I think I've got rhetorical strategies for.
Yeah. Or we could just work towards like expanding the eligibility for it and stuff like that. Like kind of like how people are trying to do with Medicare at the, national level.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Uh, do you have any plans or any proposals on improving infrastructure within the state?
I not directly, but that is definitely something that I, would be in support of. You know, uh, I'm not exactly sure how we would go about doing that, or in that kind of a thing, but yeah, like that is definitely something that I'd be in support of. Like I know when it comes to certain, like when it comes to the interstates and the highways, I think that is definitely under, the state control, in terms of like, you know local roads in cities and stuff like that. I think that's more either the city or the county control. But yeah, like, what is it? 235 or I-35 or one of those is always under construction for some reason, and it feels like
Always.
no one under the age of like 30 has ever driven on those roads when they weren't going under construction, in my opinion. Like, it's insane. But yeah. What were you
Okay.
about to say?
I was say, yeah, no, I've never driven on that road, but I drive for a living, always under construction. I-35,
Yeah.
constant.
Yeah. Where are you from, actually? I'm not sure
I
what
am
part of Oklahoma you're
from
from. Yeah.
Oklahoma City,
Okay.
dead center of it.
Okay, cool.
So,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that yeah, I would actually, after we're done here, I'd like to be able to talk more in the future, more consistently about canvassing and stuff like that, because I do like what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
a question that was asked by somebody, actually, I've had it asked by three different people when I talk to them while I'm out at work, and one of them is all
Hmm.
the way out over near your district in Nakoma Park,
Okay.
and they had asked, what could we do about uh, worker unions and protections for workers forming unions so that they can't be
Hmm.
fired, essentially dealing with right to work laws in the state
Yeah.
and strengthening union uh, bargaining power and protections for workers trying to form a union.
Yeah, so that's a huge part of my platform's workers' rights. Right to work, I think, was passed via ballot initiative actually, in the year 2000, I think. It was definitely in my lifetime when I was like really, really young.
Yeah.
I want to say it was the year 2000. Yeah, like I want to repeal right to work. I think to my knowledge, if we repeal it via the state legislature, it would have to be the state legislature voting to put it on the ballot, so voters would have to vote to repeal it.
Yes, I believe so.
Um, it, it wouldn't be just like the legislature. So that's definitely something that I would like to see happen because, I think voters now, even if they're not super pro union themselves, they can understand how right to work is not necessarily a great policy for unions. And they could also recognize that unions might be positive in certain instances, even if they themselves aren't that great on unions. So I think it would have a great what's it called? A great chance of getting repealed. So that's one thing. Uh, I definitely would support more people being able to form unions, especially fast food and retail workers, because I've worked in fast food before. I couldn't think of jobs that definitely support or need unions more than fast food and retail workers, especially after and during the pandemic. Um, I want to raise the minimum wage still. $15 an hour is what I'm still wanting to raise the minimum wage for in Oklahoma. Though, if we have unions, that raising the minimum wage would be less of an issue because if workers are able to unionize and negotiate and fight for their own wages to be raised and better benefits. Not saying we wouldn't need the minimum wage, but the need to raise the minimum wage would be less of an issue. But I still support raising the minimum wage. I want paid family leave and paid medical leave, and sick leave, uh, stuff like that. Um, Pretty much anything you could think of that would involve workers being able to actually benefit more from the labor that they put into whatever business they work for, I would be in support of it. Because that's really what it is. Whenever they talk about the quote unquote labor shortage of after the pandemic or during the pandemic, it's not really a labor shortage. The unemployment rate is down, especially in Oklahoma. I think I can't remember what the number is. It's like 3 point something in Oklahoma. It's not so much a labor shortage; it's more like a wage shortage, as in the wages are too short, and people are not willing to go back to work or to work the same amount of wages that they worked at prior to the pandemic. It is a wage issue. I know some people have said like, "Oh, it's not really a matter of wages. If people can't go to work because they have to take care of their kids, then that's a child care issue." It's like, okay, but if they can't afford the child care on the job that they're working, that
So
is a wage issue.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so like it's one and the same. I mean, we could still support more programs to make daycare and childcare more affordable or free, preferably. But at the end of the day, I really do think it's wages that are the problem. Wages are too low, not just for fast food and retail workers, but for people in other positions as well. So yeah,
Nurses and everything too. Yeah, like
yeah,
some of the lowest paid people in some of the most important professions. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, I'm a big fan of trying to do again a multi-tiered approach of increase the minimum wage, get strong unions because in like I think it's Norway, Denmark, and Sweden they don't actually have a minimum wage,
yeah,
but even McDonald's employees are getting paid $25 an hour. So
yeah,
it's because unions can fight for good wages for their employees. But since we have weak unions and not very good protections for workers here in the US, having a good minimum wage while you also fight for good unions is probably the best approach that you could have.
yeah.
So, full support there. Um, I guess the next issue that was brought up to me was abortion access and funding.
Yes,
Uh, pro choice or pro life?
I'm definitely pro-choice.
Would you have any proposals, maybe not a massive issue, especially in your district, but a proposal of some kind to help with funding for abortion clinics and protecting abortion clinics so that they stop getting, firebombed and stuff? Not as big an
Yeah,
issue here in Oklahoma, but they do need
yeah,
protections.
yeah. That those are protections for abortion clinics, support for Planned Parenthood, things like that are definitely things I support. I, when I get this question from people, they usually ask me like you did, and I'm not criticizing the question necessarily, but like whenever I get asked this question, I'm usually asked, "Oh, well, do you support, authoring bills to, get more abortion access and stuff like that?" And I'm like, I mean, I would support those bills if they come up, but I don't think that they're going to pass, but I still support them. But like, I'm more for, um, what is it? Being against the abortion bills, anti-abortion bills that are going to be coming through the legislature, and trying to fight against those. Because I feel like that's going to be the more bigger obstacle, as opposed to trying to get a pro-choice bill through. Like if there's an anti-abortion bill, you have to debate it or debate against it, and either try to whittle it away so it's not as bad or restrictive as it could be, or try to make sure that it gets shot down because it's too insane or unconstitutional or something of that nature. But yeah, if a bill did come through that was in support of strengthening abortion rights and abortion access in the state of Oklahoma, of course I would support it. But it's just not something that I am, thinking is going to end up happening when we're dealing with the state legislature that we have. But yes,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Fighting anti-abortion bills, I kind of figure that one's a given, so I don't phrase it
yeah,
that way to anybody I perceive to be on the left, because
hmm
you're gonna fight against them if you're elected.
Yeah.
obviously. So that one I kind of figured, but trying to, yeah, you do bring up a good point. That's probably the way to approach it with most people is, are you going to fight against anti-abortion legislation?
Yeah. Yeah, because even occasionally you'll get some Republicans up there that vote against some of the more insane anti-abortion bills that come through the legislature, and then they end up failing. So like I think I can't remember when this was. It wasn't that long ago, but like some crazy anti-abortion bill in the legislature, it passed through the state house, but it failed in the state senate. And that obviously was because some Republicans said no to it. So it's that's more of the situation we're going to probably, or I would be fighting against or dealing with, less so trying to get a pro abortion rights bill through. But yes.
So I'm sure you have heard and seen some of the videos from the Black Lives Matter protests that we had here in Oklahoma,
Yeah.
such as
Yeah.
the officer who ran over a protester
Mm-hmm.
in the
In
streets.
Tulsa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, no. Yeah, yeah,
There was
Tulsa.
one in Tulsa, and there was one over near the Capitol at 23rd and
Wait, no.
Classen.
Yeah, the one in Tulsa wasn't an officer. It was just some
Some
person
person,
in
I
a
think.
truck. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
And then there
officer
was
one you're talking about was in Oklahoma City. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
it's actually one of my real life friends who recorded that incident, and I was wondering if you had any thoughts, support for legislature, heard of any legislature, or was thinking about not necessarily drafting some, but maybe pushing forth some protest protections for people
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
able to do things like that, like so that they don't. You can punish people for running over protesters because I mean we've got some
Yeah.
really bad anti-protest laws that have come up.
Yeah. Even with that, that's another one of the things that's kind of like I'm probably gonna have to deal with fighting against the anti-protest bills, less so pushing for protections, because I, first of all, I'm not even exactly sure what a protecting protest bill, like what kind of language that would like look like, because like we already have the First Amendment.
Yeah,
The real argument is arguing against these anti-protest bills. So I guess trying to get them repealed or something of that nature is something I would definitely support. Or if there's more of the anti-protests, which are anti-free speech legislation or bills, I would be arguing against those and fighting against those. Because at the end of the day, I mean, like, not to say I know that the reason why they're passing these bills is because they are trying to be anti Black Lives Matter uh and whatnot, but like there's not there's nothing saying that those types of bills couldn't affect protesters on the right who aren't like directly affiliated with whatever the Republicans are trying to do or something of that nature. Because have you seen some of the pro-life protesters?
yeah,
They're pretty wild.
they
Like
they get out of hand
they
sometimes.
yeah, like and like I think about that sometimes, and I'm just like but yeah, but I understand your question. I'm not sure exactly what kind of legislation someone could author to protect protesting rights. I mean, I guess there's some things you could do that kind of like outline it, but I feel like on some level those might make it more difficult for protesters or for certain protesters or something like that. But either way, I am definitely against the anti-protest legislation that is pretty broad in its language in terms of what people can't do or can do, well, can't do. So yeah.
It's more I wouldn't even think I couldn't even think of how you would word legislation, but
Yeah, like
resolutions to affirm, protesters, you know,
yeah,
making sure that it's known, hey, yeah, we don't necessarily support the underlying thing they're protesting for, but we support the right to
yeah,
protest, maybe something like that, because this does get a
yeah,
little out of hand in some of these areas.
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
the last thing that was brought up to me is police punishment for misconduct and holding them accountable. Uh,
All right.
do you know of any ways, anything we could do on that, both on a political, legislative level, and also as an individual?
So individual is in like people, individuals. Is that what you mean?
Yes,
You
like
say individual. Okay.
what are steps people could take to try and help hold police accountable for misconduct?
Okay. So a lot of this, so this is purely just about holding them accountable, right? Not like, what do we need to change about policing itself, just about holding them accountable. That's
Uh,
your question,
that's the
or
broadest one that I've
open-ended?
been. Yeah, that's the
Okay.
most common one I've been asked. For me, it's how would we
Okay.
change policing
Yeah.
structures?
Yeah.
That I guess we could tack the two together. How can we change them?
Yeah.
And under the current system, how can we hold them accountable?
Okay. So when it comes to holding well, I'll go with the first one because I feel like that one I have more of an answer for. But like the whole, as far as holding police accountable for their actions and stuff like that, I think we need to do this. This is kind of more of an individual thing, but I think it kind of a broader individual thing because it's a bunch of individuals to do this specific thing, and we need to change it. We we have to change the way that people view policing or police officers more specifically. Um, they are, at the end of the day, they're supposed to be serving the public. They are public servants, uh, much like politicians are. No,
Yeah,
so not to say that we should be able to vote out any individual police officer or anything like that, or we should treat them one to one the same. But we in general, it's considered to be an okay thing to be skeptical of politicians and the things that they say and do. Even if they look like they are doing the right thing, it's still an okay thing to be skeptical of politicians or not trustworthy of politicians. But at the end of the day, we can vote these people out, and we are supposed to, as constituents, have a decent relationship with them that doesn't go one way. It's supposed to go both ways. They're supposed to listen to us. We're supposed to, or I guess, and sometimes listen to them, but they're supposed to listen to us and legislate in our favor, do what we need them to do, even if it's not like specifically always. I don't know where I'm going with that sentence, but you get what I'm saying.
yeah,
They're supposed to serve us at the end of the day. Same thing with the cops. The way that I see a lot of people treat cops is if they are, above everything else simply because they're putting their life on the line. And I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that, being a cop is a scary thing and they are putting their lives on the line for their job. But that doesn't mean that we need to never be critical of them and always agree with them with what they say and do. We still need to be critical of them and what they say and do. Even former cops will tell you this. It's not necessarily, a crazy thing for people to say that like we should but that's like the thing that I would like to say to people is that we need to just change the way that people view cops is if they're here to protect and serve, that makes them public servants. Therefore, they need to be accountable to us. If they do something bad, then there needs to be something done about that. We shouldn't just let it slide or say, oh, well, their job is hard. It's okay for them to make mistakes like that. Not when mistakes lead to people dying or something of that nature,
right.
we would, and no one would ever say this about a politician when like I don't even know a direct analogy for this would be, but like we would never say this about a politician. Like it, at the end of the day, the politicians have a ballot box. We can vote them out, and police officers, they don't have a ballot box, but we can change laws at the city level or county level, or change the way that we do policing or training for policing and stuff like that. I don't necessarily see why viewing them as public servants and as opposed to gods among men is that outlandish of a thing. But I feel like that's where it really starts, because the way I see people talk about cops is just super weird. I don't understand why anyone would, you know, not see them in the same way that we view uh politicians.
Politician or well,
Yeah.
most anybody that does public service work, really. They
Exactly. Like in like we wouldn't like yeah, like I just don't, but yeah,
uh,
but you get what I'm saying. Yeah.
yeah, most of the time when people start being deific of cops, like I do have to point out I was a pizza delivery driver for a bit, and
Mm-hmm.
having talked to quite a few cops, I've had more guns pulled on me doing that job than they have being a cop. It's
Wow.
more
Okay.
dangerous. It's more dangerous to be a
Yeah.
pizza delivery driver than it is to be a cop under normal circumstances.
Yeah.
There are definitely states where that's not the case. If there's like big drug war stuff going on, then it can
Yeah.
be
That's also
dangerous.
the thing too. Like a lot of the policing conversation, like not to say that there isn't anything we could do at the state level or even at the national level about policing, but like a lot of this is like local stuff. Like these kinds of conversations need to be happening like at your city council meetings or stuff like that, or whenever your sheriff's race in your county is happening,
Go ahead and go
and
vote
stuff
in
like
that.
that. Yeah, like these are more things that need to be affected like at the local level and like city level, because like I don't like, not to say that no one at the state level or the national level could do anything about it, but some things will work in other places, and then other places some things won't work. I don't really think it's necessarily a one size fits all thing. Um I
And
mean, for certain things, it's, pretty cut and paste, like they should be, but still, you get what I'm saying. A lot of these things aren't necessarily like
state
national or
or
state things. Yeah,
yeah,
they're
like
more local things.
some of the
Yeah,
police stuff is absolutely up to the county because they're county police. The state doesn't have control over the county in that area.
yeah,
Like they don't have the reach for that. They can put
yeah,
broad rules over things, but the state doesn't fire an individual cop. They can fire state troopers.
yeah,
So yeah, that is another one. I'm trying to get more people out to do smaller local stuff because almost everybody focuses on national things.
yeah,
And here in America, that causes so many things to get overlooked. Like being able to fight the drug war, people want to put it all on a national thing, but
yeah. You
states
need to be
individually
talking
are
to your
doing it.
DA.
Yeah, states
You need to be,
individually are dealing with it. Like, oh, California legalized pot and decriminalized all these other drugs, and like I think it was Oregon or whatever. And now the
yeah,
police aren't going out to do major drug arrests left and right and eating up this huge amount of city budget, and it has
yep,
actually improved the relations of the communities and the police.
yeah. Like, and especially when it comes, and these are all part of criminal justice reform conversations. I feel like people forget about that, and people just want to make it a conversation about marijuana and drug possession and prison population. Like, no, it's also about, like police conduct and your district attorney's office and all of that. Like, another thing that people don't talk about is like when it comes to criminal justice reform, funding your DA's office, which is a state thing, by the way. This isn't a local thing. The state, at least in Oklahoma, the
Funds the
state
DA.
funds the DA's office. And if you do that, like, the district attorney will have less of a reason to need to do extra charges for people to be able to do things, because those extra charges or whatever it is ends up going to fund the DA's office. So if you just fund the DA's office, a lot of the extra like BS that people end up going through will not be as bad, or they'll be able to, do certain things differently because they have less of an incentive to have to lock people up and stuff like that. Like there's tons of other things that people don't even think about when it comes to these things.
Yeah, I think some, especially a lot of the people you'll come across on, say, Twitter, they
Yeah.
hear the most basic thing of, oh, it's police misconduct, drugs, and and stuff like that. And they don't take into account any other factors. None of them. They
Yeah.
just hear the most baseline surface level thing and go, oh, it's because of this only.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other factors in it. DA underfunded, cops being put into positions where they have to deal with mental health crises as well as drugs and break-ins and being called for literally everything. Yeah, the only thing they don't get called for is pretty much fire, and even
Yeah.
then they still have to show up.
Yep, that's true.
So while I'm not a big supporter of policing as it currently stands, I do recognize that they are overworked for what they're supposed to be doing, and they're not trained
Yep.
for 80% of it.
Yep.
So we need to kind of spread that out a little bit. That also would reduce a lot of the problems that people have with police. If you have
Yeah.
social workers taking care of a majority of mental health crises or things like that,
Mm-hmm.
you don't call the police for, you know, injuries or whatever. If there's like a big wreck or what or something, yeah, police need to be there to document stuff down.
Yeah.
If just so they
And
know
direct
who's at fault.
traffic a little bit too. Yeah.
Yeah, mostly. I mean, you could get a
And
different
you can get
group.
someone for that too.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
different group for directing traffic. The cop does it. The cops are doing their investigative stuff, going, okay, how did this happen? What is this? They're doing their math and all that. And then
Yeah.
to deal with the traumatic portions of things, you also have some social workers out there to talk to people and get information. Like
Yeah.
there's so much that we could do to reduce the workload we put onto specifically police, as well as
Mm-hmm.
coupling in the decriminalizing of drugs and stopping them from doing like, I think disarming most of them from like guns, lethal rounds would also help
Mm-hmm.
a lot. So you just couple quite a few of these things together, and I guarantee through the data that I've seen from each individual factor, we're
Yeah.
we're almost guaranteed to completely change the way people would interact with police, think about police, and the way that police would interact with people.
Yeah.
Along with getting rid of that, I don't remember the guy's name, but he's a guy who goes around and does police training seminars, and he came up with the science
Yeah.
of killology and stuff. Yeah, no, that guy needs to be barred from going anywhere near a police officer ever
Yeah.
because he's caused so many problems.
Yeah.
So if we do all of those, decriminalize drugs, add in these other systems for people to be able to go to instead of calling police for mental health and stuff like that, taking away some of their workload and disarming from lethal rounds, like removing lethal rounds from a good chunk of policing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that we'd solve most of our problems. Police wouldn't be as aggressive. We would have safer communities,
Yeah.
and this actually also does tie into some other things sociologically, like with prison overpopulation. Well, a
Mm-hmm.
disproportionate number of that is young black men.
Yeah.
That keeps them out of jail because they're not getting arrested for. Sometimes it's just something dumb, like they have a joint on them or whatever. They'd never really smoked before, but they get caught.
Yeah.
Boom, jail. Like, come on. So we stop doing that. We've got more people A in the workforce, and B more good role models on a social level for people to be able to look up to. Like
Yeah.
there's so many things that I hear about on that front with the incarceration
Mm-hmm.
problem that we've got. And after looking into it, yeah, it's not people like me that are getting the vast majority of it. That's for sure. And I think that we could do a lot by just a few little policies. We could remove some of that disparity. How would you feel about trying to push for more drug decriminalization in the state?
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm in favor of. I remember another big thing I've been talking about is in 2016, in November, we voted on two state questions, 780 and 781. 780 decriminalized drugs from felony to a misdemeanor, and then 781 was supposed to take the money that we were saving from doing that, what we did in 780, and it was supposed to go towards rehabilitation for people who are addicted to drugs. And we haven't actually done that. Like, the money has not been allocated towards that at all since then. And whose fault is that? It's probably, the Republican majority that's only gotten bigger since 2016. And they haven't done that. And that's like a huge, like, problem that a lot of people don't even know. Like, I don't even think a lot of people even, like, know about this, because the only time I ever, like, have it come up is when I'm talking to state representatives or state senators, Democrats more specifically, and they say that they talk about it, they bring it up every year. Um, but yeah, I'm definitely in favor of decriminalizing more drugs and not having them be as big of a problem. Another big thing I'm running on is legalizing recreational marijuana. Um, I feel like it's long past time that we do that,
Oh yeah,
and you know, the medicinal marijuana has been a huge boom to our economy over the last few years. With high paying jobs, or at least higher paying jobs than, most other jobs in Oklahoma. And, people are able to get the medicine that they need. So, might as well just go ahead and make it legalize it recreationally. So, you know, if more people can have more jobs, more places can open up, and we can stop criminalizing marijuana possession in general, and period.
absolutely. Okay, that makes me very happy because I just had to renew my medical card,
Yeah,
and the cost of that. I mean, I get it. The state gets an extra $100
yeah.
per person for doing it, but I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee if you removed that $100 requirement for the medical card, made it legal recreationally, and then just
Mm-hmm.
raised the taxes on it by 2%, so it's
Yeah.
17 instead of 15% total.
Mm-hmm.
That more than makes up for any amount of lost revenue for not having the medical card, and more people get to smoke without. I mean, you lose ticket revenue for arrests and stuff, I guess. But
That's a
whatever.
local thing, though. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
Uh,
whatever. I don't care
well,
about that. We can
kind of local,
subsidize
but
that.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah, like, it's that, and that's the other part I forgot to mention, is it's going to be more revenue for the state if we legalize marijuana recreationally. And Colorado, whenever they legalized it, like, they got to build new schools over the last, like, decade or so. Like, with the revenue that they got from for legalizing recreational marijuana, I don't think we would make as much as them because our population's not as big as them, but, like, we would definitely get a decent chunk of tax money from that. And we could use that to maybe build new schools or improve the ones that we do have, hire more teachers, all that good stuff. So yeah.
I'm pretty sure that part of our marijuana sales is supposed to go to schooling, isn't it?
I don't
I
know. I
I
don't
think
know,
that's what
because,
part of
like,
that and our lottery money was also
I know
supposed to go.
yeah, I know that's where the lottery money is supposed to go. I'm not quite sure about the medical marijuana. I think that goes to the state health department, because certain revenue sources are earmarked for certain things, and some revenue sources are earmarked for general revenue. I'm not quite sure where the taxes for medical marijuana is going, though.
According to Channel 6 News, State
Mm-hmm.
law. Okay, this was in April 22nd. State lawmakers approved plans sending medical marijuana tax revenue to low-income schools.
Okay. Okay, that's good.
Lawmakers from
That's
Fave zeroed in
news.
on. Okay, yeah,
That's
because they didn't know how to
yeah.
portion it out, and now they figured out they're just going to send it to. So an estimated $38 million would be divided up among schools with the
Oof.
lowest local tax revenue. That's actually
Okay.
really good.
Yeah, that is really good. Yep. So, but yeah, we could get more than that then, because that's
More.
38 million is just 1 year's worth, right? 2019 or was that
2020.
earlier this year? 2020, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just 1 year's worth. Like we do recreational, probably be twice that probably. So yeah. But yeah. Any other questions?
Off the top of my head and out of the question list, no, I think we actually tackled the big ones. I do have some that I want to ask, like not on the record. Um,
Okay.
so for right now, let me go ahead and just say thank you all for watching this interview. This is Gregory Hardin II, and we are going to be pushing for canvassing in the very near future to try and get this wonderful individual into office. So that is going to wrap up this interview section, and I've got a couple of questions to ask off record. Thanks for watching
All
again,
right.
everyone.